98FM. This is 98FM's Dublin Talks with Adrian Kennedy.
Weekdays from 10 a.m. on 98FM.
An Irish woman has taken to writing a blog about struggling with her eating disorder. Jessica Denise has decided to share her feelings and her thoughts about how she has struggled so chronically with an eating disorder. And I want to read just some of her blog, and maybe this will strike a note with you, and if it does, I'd love to hear from you. You can call me on 6797 981. I've struggled with anorexia for longer than I would care to admit, but the last 3.5 years have seen me fall further down the rabbit hole. I've been in therapy for 3 years, and outpatient treatment just isn't helping. My body is struggling to keep up with the lack of nutrients I give it. I'm 25 years old, and in December I found out that as a result of my anorexia, I've developed osteoporosis in my spine. I'm scared of falling or moving wrong or being hugged too tight because my risk of spinal fracture is high. I'm constantly cold to the point that my mum recently had to buy me another duvet to put on top of the one I already had in my bed. I wear thermals to work and sit with my scarf on. I hate eating in front of people who aren't my family. I hate eating in restaurants. The whole day is one big assault course that I have to tackle my way through. Anorexia is constantly screaming in my ear. Just this week, I found out that I would not receive funding from the HSE to cover a 12-week inpatient stay in St. John of God Hospital. Why? Because ignoring all the above physical and mental complications I experienced due to anorexia, I'm too healthy. My BMI isn't low enough. I'm not the only person in Ireland who hasn't received funding or specialist help based on current weight and bloods. If you speak to anyone with anorexia, they will share a similar story to me, and in recent weeks many have done so. Anorexia is a mental illness and should be treated accordingly. I'm joined on the line by Jessica Denise. You're very welcome to 98FM. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. You say that you've struggled with anorexia for many years. When did you first develop it, and what were the circumstances leading up to you developing anorexia?
So we've traced it back that I began struggling with food and just all that sort of stuff when I was around 15. I'd been bullied shortly before that when I'd just gone into secondary school, and my dad had recently passed away. So I think it was just a combination of factors that contributed to it.
Okay, so for the last 10 years, you've lived with an eating disorder like anorexia.
Yeah, I've lived with an eating disorder, but in the last, I'd say 3.5 years, it completely took over to the point where I got very ill. Again, because I was in my final year in college, I was very stressed, there was various things going on at home, and it was my way of just gaining back a bit of control, I suppose.
Now, explain to me a little bit more about how your body is being affected by this illness. For example, will it make it more difficult for you to, for example, conceive children or whatever?
Yeah, I think it will, because as a result of the anorexia, I lost my periods for over a year, and since then they've been quite irregular. So obviously I'm not in a place to be starting a family right now, but when it comes to that in the future, I don't know if I've ruined my chances.
Now, you say in your blog that you believe that anorexia is a mental health issue.
Yeah.
How so? Because a lot of people will say, is it not just down to not eating properly?
Well, you see, it's a combination of both. I mean, because the weight loss and the food is a symptom of the illness itself, it shows on the outside, whereas if someone with schizophrenia or bipolar, you wouldn't look at them and know they were ill, so to speak. But with those of us who struggle with anorexia and those who struggle severely, you can see it on their bodies. But in most cases, the majority of people with anorexia, they aren't actually very underweight. Like, you wouldn't tell by looking at them. It's an internal struggle in your mind.
Okay, so you're 25 now. You've struggled with anorexia since you were 15.
Yeah.
So give me an idea now. what you would eat on a daily basis, for example, and what measures do you take to ensure that you don't put on weight, or do you try to ensure you don't put on weight?
I won't go into too much detail because I don't think it's helpful for anyone who might be listening who is struggling themselves, but I'd stick to a minimum amount of calories for the day, and I stick to a rigid number of foods that I'd eat, so like snack bars, stuff like that, just to maintain my current level of weight. I've gained weight from where I lost a lot of weight, but I'm still not at my healthy weight.
So what do you see of yourself when you look in the mirror?
I'd look in the mirror and I wouldn't be very happy with what I see. I'm quite self-critical. I doubt myself a lot, and especially because of the physical aspects of the illness, there's more that I dislike about myself. So my skin, it's not great.
What I mean by that is, I've spoken to anorexia sufferers in the past, and when they look in their mirror, they see somebody who's overweight. Is that what you see?
I wouldn't see someone who's overweight, but I'd see where I still need to lose weight. It wouldn't be that I'd look in and see that I'm completely obese. I just think that for me, I'm just not where I should be, that I'm just too heavy for myself.
But when I look at photographs, as I did earlier on, of you, Jessica, I don't see a woman who needs to lose weight at all. You're quite emaciated.
I suppose that's a difference of opinion, because I'd look at that myself and that's just not how I see it. But I suppose that's just the mask of the illness.
What sort of effect has your illness for the last 10 years had on your family?
It's had a big impact on my family, especially my mum and my younger brother, because I live with them. Just this week being refused inpatient funding was quite a lot on my mum and my brother. They were both very upset. My mum had told me last night that my brother, he's 17, he was actually crying because he was so worried about me, which made me feel quite guilty because he shouldn't be worrying about me. He's only a child.
Okay, so your brother,
a lot of...
your younger brother is saying you literally, for want of a better expression, waste away.
Yeah.
And that scares him.
Yeah, it does scare him, and it scares my mum, and just my family would be very concerned, and my friends as well. I think there was a lot of disappointment over just not getting that specialist treatment.
Now, I know from having visited mental health hospitals myself over the years, you would see a number of inpatients who quite clearly are being treated for eating disorders, but the problem for you is that you were declined funding for inpatient treatment. Yeah,
so basically, I don't have private healthcare, so like BHI or something like that, so I wouldn't be able to afford it myself. So my community mental health centre, they applied for funding because the HSC will fund people who can't afford it. But basically what came back to me was that my BMI just wasn't low enough for the treatment, and that normally they'd fund people who would be, their weight would be lower, if you get what I mean. They'd be more medically compromised.
Okay, so what you're saying is you nearly need to be on death's door before you get you get treatment. Okay, well I'm going to...
That's it, exactly.
Now you, as I mentioned, and I read some of it at the start, you have set up an online blog. One of the things about this condition is that people... I even know, listening to us now, there are many people who are living with this condition who don't speak publicly about it, who keep it to themselves, or don't even admit that they have an issue at all.
An issue, yeah. And I'd be quite the same. I don't really talk about it,
But you have decided to speak publicly in terms of your online blog.
Yes, and that was because of what had happened last week. See, I got so mad, and then I was upset, and I was like, well, someone that needs to come out and say something about this. And I kept thinking about it all weekend. I was like, well, why can't that someone be me? I can just bring a bit of awareness, make someone feel less alone, and which is what happened. I received hundreds of messages from people around the country who are in a similar position. So.
All right, stay there for 1 second, Jessica, because I want to just bring in a call here from Philip. Philip, I know you were somewhat reluctant to speak to us because you're finding this very upsetting listening to. Why so, Philip?
I had a younger sister who was sick for about 3-4 years, and it just wasn't. Sorry, wasn't expecting to hear it on the radio today. It just wanted to offer support. And
So tell me about your sister and what she went through.
very similar. Started at 15, self-conscious first, wanted to lose weight, and it just spiraled out of control. And it is all mental.
And this is one of the things that Jessica was saying, that this needs to be treated as more of a mental health issue than merely a physical not eating enough food issue. Which
and what I'd like to highlight is the services here and what the help here isn't good enough. My sister had to go to the UK twice. She relapsed when she came home because the set wasn't good enough and had to go back
and get treatment in the UK.
Yeah.
Because the treatment available to her here, and this is what we're hearing from Jessica as well, it just isn't sufficient.
Yeah. And I'd recommend advising anyone to look into the UK. It was a place in Luton. I'd have to get the name now. It's just gone a bit blank, but it was fantastic, and it's proper dedicated to the illness and support groups after, and for the families as well, which is very important.
And did it help your sister?
Yeah, she's in college now. She's doing work experience with me every Tuesday in her accounts. She's flying at the moment, but you have to have a good change. But
it wasn't for the help she was given here in Ireland?
No, not one bit, no. And I can't stress that enough if you're highlighting the issue that the setup in this country is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't want to get into the ins and outs of the HSC, but it's scary how bad it is. And any family going through it, I wouldn't waste your time, really. I'd look abroad straight away.
And that's, unfortunately, that's not an option for everybody, because not everybody can rattle together the money to go and get treatment like that.
Well, in fairness now, there was funding, so I have to say that was a good thing. In the end, it was very hard to get and had to be fighted for, and it was taken away and put back, and there was a lot of hassle with the funding. But they eventually had to fund it because she was in Temple Street and nearly dead, and they had no choice, really. And
like I said, listening to Jessica's story, what she's been told in no uncertain terms is she's just not sick enough to get treatment, which I find just bizarre. Do you know what I mean? That's
crazy,
that's like a hospital saying, yeah, okay, you've got cancer, but it's not advanced enough, so we won't treat you until it is advanced enough.
Oh my God, that was the comparison I made to my friends when I spoke about it at the weekend.
Like you have a condition, but it's not severe enough for us to treat you. Let me ask you, Philip, we were talking with Jessica, and she spoke about her younger brother and the effect that it has had on him, and he was getting very upset. You, as your sister's brother, must have found it very difficult to watch your sister fade away.
Yeah, sorry, it's very hard to talk about. I don't know if everyone gets as bad now. She kind of hit rock bottom, like as in on a drip and not eating, and it's like exorcist kind of stuff in the hospital. I can't explain it to you. It's crazy. So it's very, very long-lasting effects for family members. Yeah.
Right, and that's when people looking from the outside feeling helpless, basically.
Yeah, and just to witness it is it's like something out of The Exorcist. It's the only way to explain it. When it gets to the rock bottom now, obviously not every case goes that bad, but I'd love girls just to realise that it's not all about body image as well. I'm trying my best to...
I know, I can completely understand, Philip. It has to be very difficult to talk about. But the good news is, from your point of view and from your sister's point of view, is she has made a recovery. She may have had to go to England to get that treatment, but she has made a recovery and her life is looking much better now.
Oh, 100%. And it's the person has to want to get better. That might take a lot of time, and I have to say fair play just highlighting the issue. It needs huge... and there's not with the HSE, and you wouldn't see Anson really highlighted elsewhere. So they're doing a great job doing that, and also Jessica coming on, have to say, is very brave, because I can barely put a sentence together, to be honest. So I don't know how she does it.
Well, I tell you what we're going to ask you to do, Philip. We're going to get in contact with you later on and find out more details about where your sister was treated, and maybe that can help Jessica in the right direction, because it just seems bizarre that she's being more or less told you're not sick enough yet to get inpatient treatment. It just seems bizarre.
It's backwards, yeah, it really is at the moment. But it's getting better, and the more people highlight it, the better. And fair play to you again. It's great to see.
Thanks very much for talking to us, Philip.
No problem.
Thank
Thanks.
you. And Jessica, you can hear from that man how upsetting it is to just talk about his sister, and see what she has gone through. Let me find out from you then. Like I said, from your online blog, you feel that there isn't enough support available. We'll put you in touch with that place that Philip mentioned. But what does the future hold for you, do you think?
Right now, I'm not too sure. I know my counsellor has spoke to me today about coming up with something that we could do in an outpatient way that's quite similar to what would be offered inpatient. So we're just going to see what happens there. And he's mentioned touching in with a dietitian. So. Okay,
so you are trying to get something, but like I said, this highlights how important it is for the state to recognise this as a condition. And like I said, the analogy, and you say you've used it yourself, is for the hospital system to say, well, you have cancer, but it's not serious enough, so we'll treat you when you're nearly dead. And that's more or less what you've been told.
Yeah, I was told my BMI just wasn't low enough, that, like, I'm ill, but it's not ill enough, which was upsetting to hear, because I live with it every day, you know, like, it's torture, like, unless you've been there yourself, it's you can't put it into words. So for them to say that my suffering wasn't enough,
it just seems bizarre.
It was just really upsetting. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I still can't.
Let me read out this message that's just come in to me on WhatsApp, 0877 98 98 98. I lost about 4 stone. I was never a big girl, just average, but lost my dad when I was 18. Didn't lose the weight then, but my mum started suffering extremely badly with her mental health. I was hospitalised several times for up to 3 months at a time. Message goes on to say, that's when I started to just drop weight rapidly during the time my partner was in hospital. So it was just one thing after another. I'm now 7 stone 2 pounds, and any time I go to the doctors, they say there's nothing wrong with me. And that's exactly what I'm hearing from you. Stay there for a moment. Anne, you're on 98 FM. How are you, Anne?
Good, thank you.
Your story is about your son.
Yeah, I find that when people speak about anorexia, that they tend to speak only about girls. But I actually have a son who suffered for many, many years from anorexia. Mm-hmm. And I agree that the treatment here is difficult to find. We spend horrendous amounts of money on private treatment for him. Temple Street were absolutely amazing. And it is difficult to find the right treatment because not every treatment is suitable for every individual. Their causes are different, their cases are different. And it is difficult, but with the right push behind you. And I find as well that people tend to think it's something that you can't recover from or that is difficult to recover from, which it's inordinately difficult, affects the whole family and everybody in it. But I always like to say a good ending helps other people along. And now, having spent 5 years fighting the battle and of the eating disorder and the depression that goes along with it, he is currently a fitness instructor, personal trainer.
Wow.
He is just amazing. Absolutely amazing. He's engaged to be married. He fights the good fight every single day, and I think it's important that people realise that the outcome can be good if you get the right help, but to remember that it does affect boys as well as girls, and to watch them.
All right, that's great advice, Anne. Thanks very much indeed. Jessica, I think it's important and I think it's great that you have gone public with your online blog. Where can somebody find that? Because what I read out earlier on is only the tip of the iceberg of what is on your online site.
So my blog is Jessica, Jessica, Denise, Denise. If you just Google it, it should come up, I'd say. Okay,
Jessica Denise, Jeska Denise, Denise. And you can find that full online blog. As I said, Jessica, we're going to put you in touch with that man who was on a couple of minutes ago. And
that would be great.
That might be of some help to you. And I not only appreciate you doing this online thing, but I really appreciate you talking to us, because this is something that doesn't get talked about enough, and something that needs to be highlighted. One of the reasons we don't cover it too often is because people don't talk too often. So you've kind of broken the ice there, and I think you're brilliant for doing it. Well done, Jessica, and thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
Yeah, thank you too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Now, if you've been affected by any of the issues you've been listening to with regard to eating disorders, there's a fantastic organisation called Bodywhys. It's BODYWHYS, Bodywhys. Their phone number, they're the Eating Disorder Association of Ireland. Their phone number is 1890 200 444. 1890 200 444 if you've been affected by any of the issues that we've been discussing with regard to eating disorders.
98FM. This is 98FM's Dublin Talks with Adrian Kennedy.
Weekdays from 10 a.m. on 98FM.